Brother Chan, are you there?
I am indeed present.
I think there's been some sort of mistake on the game stream schedule. It says we're doing a point-and-click adventure game.
We are.
Oh, good. I suppose our subscriber count was climbing too fast. Thank you, Brother Chan. Thank you for choosing a genre that will gently tamp it back down into the double digits. Maybe next time we can do a live stream of paint drying or watch a chia pet grow in real time. How about just footage of an unlit Yule log and... What's all that mess scattered on your side of the desk, brother?
This would be my clue notebook, my map notebook, my inventory sheet, and a collection of Rube Goldberg cartoons. I'm going into this prepared.
Good heavens, brother, do you like this sort of thing?
Oh yes, I am an extremely ardent admirer of the genre, and today's game, Thimbleweed Park, is no ordinary adventure title, but rather the latest effort from legendary developer Ron Gilbert, creator of classic LucasArts adventure titles including Maniac Mansion and the Monkey Island series. I'm looking forward to it immensely. Why don't you like adventure games?
Because they're slow and obtuse and nothing makes any sense in them.
By this you mean they force you to think and you're uncomfortable with that?
Oh no, don't turn this back on me. Let me tell you the typical adventure game experience. You start it up and you click on things and talk to some people and soon you pick up, I don't know, a top hat or a mummified squirrel or something, and you think, these go somewhere, you can figure this out, and so you try something straightforward, put the top hat on a mannequin or feed the mummified squirrel to a cat, but that doesn't work, so you start to get creative. You try to put the hat on the squirrel or use both of them in an unfinished art installation. It doesn't work. By this time, all the NPCs have completely run through the unique dialogue and are just repeating their final line, which was probably just a quip of some sort and nothing directly plot-related, so you've forgotten what you were actually working towards in the first place. So for the next half hour or so, you're just clicking randomly, hearing 1,000 repeats of the game's 6 variations of the line, "You can't use that here," straining your very sanity until finally you quit the game out of frustration, look up the solution on GameFAQs, and spend the next several hours muttering to yourself and drinking wild turkey straight from the bottle while your loved ones attempt not to make any eye contact.
That's really not how it goes for everybody, brother.
Oh, it does so. You've just gotten to the point where you enjoy the abuse because the pain lets you know you're still alive. I've been there. It got me up to season 4 of The Walking Dead, but I became happier once I let go, Chan.
I genuinely enjoy adventure games, brother, particularly those of the LucasArts mold. Back in the toddler days of PC gaming, adventure games distinguished themselves from the usual arcade fare with cinematic aesthetics and genuine personality.
Right, and now you can get both of those things from literally every genre on the market. Look at Uncharted 4. A good story, fun dialogue, and you still get to wreak unimaginable property damage. What void still exists that adventure games are filling?
Just sit back, brother, and I will personally demonstrate to you the worth of the point-and-click adventure genre.
And if I decide to just get up and go do something fun instead,
then I shall unleash upon you a storm of blackmail as only multiple decades of close sibling contact can accumulate.
Are you talking about Spring
Break.
Well, I'm not opposed to the genre per se.
Then let us begin. Thimbleweed Park. I'm very excited about this one. The reviews have been very favorable.
One hopes it'll be good, since it looks like they've been working on it since 1986. Were the Duke Nukem Forever project leads involved in any way?
The graphics are intentionally retro-styled, brother.
Oh, fantastic. Our video game is a hipster.
It's mirroring the design aesthetic of the original Maniac Mansion, brother. Another Ron Gilbert creation.
Yes, I know Maniac Mansion. I actually played it back in the day. Never finished it, though. I got stuck on a puzzle.
Can you remember which one?
Oh, yes, I can remember which one, all right. In fact, this particular puzzle is a very large part of why I don't like adventure games. Do you remember Kimberly Linderson?
What, from high school? I do.
Well, I had a date set with her one Friday evening.
Really? She was very pretty, brother.
Yes, I recall.
Way out of your league.
All right.
Just leaps and bounds.
And I was also playing Maniac Mansion, and I seemed to be making reasonable progress, too. Until I found this chainsaw in the game that was out of gas.
Ooh.
And I knew if I was going to finish this game that I was going to need to find that gasoline. So I looked and I looked. I looked for hours. I tell you, Chan, I very nearly fell into madness. I broke things. I never found it. And when I finally gave up from a mixture of frustration, fatigue, dehydration, and bladder pressure, it was 4 a.m. I had completely missed my date.
Oh, dear.
I tried to explain things later. I really liked this girl, Chan, so I felt I needed to tell her the truth.
That you blew her off to play a video game.
She did not take it well. Did you know Kimberly was on the student council? And did you further know that her old student council was essentially a podunk Cosa Nostra? She gave me the green light. I was dropped from the AV club, my counselor's recommendation on my Stanford application was withdrawn, and members of the chess club held me down so that marching band clarinetists could punch me in the kidneys.
Ooh.
Well, it's over now. We've all moved on. Kimberly married a man in the cement/casino industry. Still, I know I should put it behind me, but I feel like I could get some closure if I just looked up the solution to the puzzle. You know, even if it made me feel silly for not figuring it out myself, at least I'd have some proof that it wasn't all just some cruel joke on the part of the developers to ruin my life.
Maybe you should just let that one be, brother. Hey, look, a corpse.
All right, if we're going to do this, let's get up to speed. We've got Agent Scully and Latvian Agent Mulder, and we're supposed to use them to solve this guy's murder.
I believe that is correct.
Of course, that's the problem with adventure games. You think you're trying to solve a murder, but maybe you're not supposed to be doing that at all. Maybe you're supposed to attach a propeller and an ironing board to the corpse and fly it over a tall fence. There's no way to tell.
I'm pretty sure you're not going to turn the corpse into an airplane, brother.
Are you 100% sure?
I am not.
My point stands. Oh, hang on, brother.
You're not sneaking off, are you?
No, I forgot my drink in the other room. Just tell me what's happening so I don't miss anything. I'll be listening.
All right. Well, we're looking through the bushes. The cursor's found something odd. We're going to pick it up. And... Uh-oh.
What is it, brother?
It was nothing. They hid nothing in the bushes. Don't come back yet.
See, that's another thing. You never know if you're actually solving a puzzle or just ushering in the next punchline.
A valid criticism. Why don't you stay in the kitchen for a little bit?
No, I'm good now. Hey, what is that in her inventory?
What, you mean the all-red parrot mask with back-mounted vertical circuit board assembly?
Oh. I just don't think I have a handle on their sense of humor, Chen.
It's an empty whiskey bottle.
You know, brother, it's entirely possible that some of our younger viewers watching now have never actually played an adventure game. It may behoove us to provide some sort of explanation of the genre.
Right. Well, okay. You know how when the power goes out and none of your fun stuff works anymore and you begrudgingly read a book?
That wasn't what I meant, brother. In a point-and-click adventure game, the player works through a narrative by solving a series of logic puzzles. In most cases, the player does not have direct one-to-one control of their character's physical actions, but rather directs their character's attention within the game space and uses their character's observations as clues to formulate an action strategy.
You know why younger people aren't familiar with adventure games? Because if they made it all the way through your explanation, they've aged 30 years. They started out looking for a fun game to play, and now they're researching hair loss cures and term life insurance. You're like the wrong holy grail of game descriptions.
Or they're logic games you play by clicking around the screen.
Now that's the sizzle.
This is really odd. Should I save my game?
I wouldn't worry about it. The game was expertly designed to have no dead ends or death, yet still be scary and have a sense of tension. You can feel safe exploring whatever you want.
Now, this, of course, was an intentional callback to LucasArts' no-death policy.
An admirable goal in theory, but I don't see how they could carry it out. A balanced diet, regular exercise, comprehensive safety regulation, all helpful certainly, but in the end, the Reaper always comes to collect your share of the pizza money.
Brother, one, that metaphor needs significant work, and two, I meant LucasArts had a no-death policy in all their later adventure games, as opposed to adventure games from, for instance, rival developer Sierra, who had a, let's face it, distinctly pro-death policy. It's important to remember that games were still emerging from what were largely arcade roots. The idea of a game whose primary purpose was to convey a story rather than test a skill was extremely new, and they were still working out the particulars of how to balance challenge and frustration. As a result, many of the stories that early adventure games conveyed tended to end abruptly with, and then the player died horribly.
Oh yes, and they weren't at all upfront about what would actually kill you either. The same game that would only let you progress if you jammed a knife into a toaster to release a digital lock by shorting out the electric system would also drop you to your death if you tried to reach for an object over the side of a cliff with your bare hand instead of with a coat hanger. It was kind of like Forrest Gump's proverbial box of chocolates, except if 1/10 of them were always filled with poop. And after you died, it was back to the last save point, assuming you'd remembered to save in the last few hours. And there was a very good chance you didn't, because a lot of these games, you couldn't save just anywhere. Think of the typewriters in the Resident Evil series. Come to think of it, early adventure games' callous, unforgiving design mechanics kind of unwittingly created the survival horror genre.
At least shambling, flesh-eating zombies were consistent.
Here's a fun one. Several of the early adventure titles, including the original Maniac Mansion, would just stand by and let you break your own game with no warning whatsoever. You get the cookie of infinite bribery that you need to get past the gate goblin or whatever, only you don't know that because you're not psychic, so you feed it to a dog and voila! The game's unwinnable. And the game doesn't tell you it's unwinnable, it just lets you keep bumbling along in purgatory until you either get bored or starve to death. Somewhere right now, this very minute, there's a guy still playing a game of King's Quest III that he started in 1986 because he still doesn't realize he wasn't supposed to throw away the weird rock he found in the game's second hour.
There's an entire school of philosophy waiting to be born in that.
Hang on, where is this? Why'd you skip ahead? How are we supposed to solve this thing if you're skipping puzzles?
I'm glad to find you invested now, brother, but you knew we weren't going to play the whole game in 15 minutes, correct?
I thought that was the point of the adventure game revival, tailor them to fit millennial attention spans. How do they expect 19-year-olds to process a narrative that doesn't occur in 5-minute chunks or star Wolverine?
One, I don't think you're giving the younger generation enough credit, brother, and two, I don't think adventure games ever really went away so much as they underwent a mutation. As you yourself pointed out, how many third-person action titles now include logic and environmental puzzles standard? How many of them include strong characters and deep storylines? The truth is that almost every major release now is, at least in part, something of an adventure game. So inasmuch as a revival does exist, brother, there is no obligation on its part to retool the genre for a wider audience. That's already happening organically. Instead, we can unapologetically embrace this very special, very specific variety of adventure game the revival celebrates. Also, a full-throttle style adventure game starring Wolverine would be kind of awesome.
Oh crap, Mulder just got sucker punched by the Mothman. He's probably angry about all that bad press from the Detour episode.
You did catch this isn't actually an X-Files game, didn't you, brother?
What? Well, sure, of course I knew that.
You're disappointed now, aren't you?
Well, honestly, no. The X-Files doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to video game adaptations. Do you remember the FMV X-Files game from 1998?
I remember it existing, sort of. I didn't play it. Was it bad?
It was rated a 3.7 out of 10.
By who?
By Game Informer, Chan.
By Game Informer? But the only times Game Informer ever rates below a 5 is
when the game disc literally dissolves into a mass of cockroaches like the Possessed Hobo and Prince of Darkness before they can insert it into the console. Yes, I've steered clear.
It's a dime just lying there.
Do you suppose, brother, that real-life hoarders and kleptomaniacs have any sort of natural advantage when it comes to adventure games?
Not necessarily. In order to succeed in an adventure game, it's not enough simply to acquire every piece of garbage or unattended merchandise in sight. You also have to be willing to part with or even destroy any bit of it at a moment's notice. You are not a collector of junk, brother, but a conduit for it.
That's rather zen, brother.
The things that you own end up owning you.
That was from Fight Club. Quit while you're ahead.
Hey there! Let's go over to the counter where we can talk. Alrighty now.
I can't quite put my finger on it, but this place stinks of false advertising.
Sorry about that, hon. This used to be Ricky's Cakes, but now we sell vacuum tubes.
Now, I don't want to be reading too much into it, but looking at this game in comparison to LucasArts' later titles, like, for instance, Day of the Tentacle or Curse of Monkey Island, I feel that the tone of Thimbleweed Park is markedly darker, somehow less cartoonish, despite the quirky dialogue.
You're entering into a favorite arena of debate for the dedicated adventure game fan, brother. Many spirited words have been exchanged regarding the tone and design influences of adventure games through the years.
I'm going to take a wild guess now that the percentage of these spirited words that were exchanged by female humans hovers somewhere around, 0.5, 0.7?
The shift in tone you described is often, incorrectly I would say, ascribed to differences in the personal styles of designers Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer. The conventional argument is that Ron Gilbert's style bends towards serio-comic absurdism, while Tim Schafer's represents more straightforward comedy.
No, that's okay. I actually stopped caring about 30 seconds ago.
The truth is, as one might expect, considerably more complex. It's taken as a matter of course these days that traditional-style adventure games will naturally lean towards comedy, but this is as much a result of the inherent limitations of the point-and-click interface as of the designer's intent.
Case closed then.
The truth of this can be borne out by examining the mechanics of the exceptions to the rules. Dramatic adventure games such as Telltale's Game of Thrones or Walking Dead series. One might assume, given the more mature subject matter, that the game's mechanics would reflect a similar level of sophistication, and yet the opposite is true. Compared to comedic titles in the LucasArts vein, Telltale's series artificially restrict the player's freedom in order to preserve a specific tone.
I think I'm leaving my body, Chen.
How so, you ask? Consider that in a LucasArts-style adventure game, the designer has to take into account the possibility of combining any given item in the player's inventory with every key item in the game environment. An inevitable result of this freedom of the player's choice is that many of the player's choices will be markedly absurd, attempting to use a rubber chicken with a statue of a cow, for instance. This leads to one inescapable conclusion. The greater the player's freedom, the stranger and more absurd the player's choices.
Is that the phone? I'd better go check.
In this respect, humor is as much a defensive measure on the part of the developers to maintain cognitive cohesion as it is a conscious design choice. Thus, when assessing differences between developers such as Gilbert and Schafer, we have to factor out necessary humor to establish a new baseline. And in doing so, we can see that the true difference between Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer's style do not lie in the relatively fuzzy boundaries of humor/absurdism, since the truth of the matter is that both creators have regularly crossed those lines, but rather in the narrative infusion of sentimentality. Ron Gilbert's protagonists are intentionally distanced from the player, true extensions of their environment meant to be examined along with their surroundings. Tim Schafer's protagonists, on the other hand, are intentionally humanized to encourage audience identification, to take on Manny Calavera or Ben Throttle's goals as one's own. This emphasis on observation versus inhabitation thus calls to mind stylistic differences of, let us say, Stanley Kubrick versus Steven Spielberg.
Are you done?
I have a series of charts, actually. But I guess we're running low on time.
A stirring dissertation, Chen.
Well then, brother, I realize we've meandered a bit, but how do you feel about adventure games now?
Brother Chan, I can in all honesty say that never before in my entire life have I so desired to stop discussing a game and get down to actually playing it.
Want to hear some of my favorite adventure game tips?
Don't ruin the moment, Chan. Give them the outro.
Today's title, Video Gamers, has been Thimbleweed Park, on sale right now on Steam, as well as for iPad, Xbox One, and Android. Highly recommended, and we have received no financial compensation to say so.
Although we are totally open to the possibility, wink wink.
Speaking of which, if you've enjoyed today's presentation, you can directly support the creation of new videos of this sort at our Patreon page.
Open your inventory, select your money, and use it on our Patreon account.
Ooh, subtly done, brother.
Until next time, video gamers, this is Shu and Chantanaka reminding you to store your chainsaw gasoline in a sensible location, and that despite what people dressed as pigeons may tell you, it's still a good idea to save your game frequently. Good night, and may God bless.
More respect.
Hello, video gamers. I'm Shu Tanaka, that's my brother Chan, and now you can help us make new comics and animations.
Brother, is this wise? The last time we outsourced our art chores to random street people, we received very negative feedback. And one fan letter from a Mr. Robert Liefeld.
We don't want their artwork, brother. We want their money. Contribute to our Patreon account, where you'll find access to an absolute embarrassment of backer-exclusive rewards.
Click the link below and help bring more of us to a screen near you.